So earlier today, we heard about interest from the Knicks surrounding Giannis, and frankly, obviously, that should be the case. Frankly, every team should be interested in Giannis. But anyway, ultimately, there's been some stuff coming out today about Giannis, his decision to remain with the Milwaukee Bucks, the fact his family apparently went back to live in Athens, I believe, things like that. But another thing that popped up today, actually, is Miami Heat's role in all this because, of course, right? Because, of course, we have another story where the Miami Heat were linked to and interested in a superstar player, and they would have pulled off a trade, but XYZ happened, and it feels like this is commonplace. It's very reminiscent of the Celtics during the Age era, but ultimately, though, we're going to talk about this in today's video. Make sure that thumbs up and subscribe because 70% of viewers aren't subscribed, and I think you guys are missing out on the awesome content Trevor and I keep you guys informed with around the NBA as news comes out. We are just on the heels of the season in a couple of weeks as well, and it's kind of interesting that this stuff is coming out now. I think really if you go back to the beginning of the offseason, the Giannis type stuff, maybe he had an inkling of like Giannis potentially asking out, things like that. But I think that's really where the quote unquote craziest offseason ever Shams stuff comes from. I've seen some backlash on Shams because of some of the reporting early this morning around Giannis and people saying he's upset because he wasn't vindicated with that statement because Giannis didn't request a trade. But I, for one, it would have been cool, I would say, as a neutral party to see Giannis potentially make a move, and it would have been great for the channel, of course, to have something pretty seismic like that to talk about. But I do think it's pretty cool when these guys also just opt to stay with their own team through better or worse. Now, this isn't the fact he's there now is a now thing. He could be gone in a couple years from now. I don't know. But for now, I think it's still pretty cool, right? So on the Miami Heat, the Heat were prepared to offer the Bucks a trade package for Giannis that did not include Bam. Okay, so firstly, there's two ways to look at this. Firstly, the Miami Heat don't really have anybody worth Giannis if they're not including Bam. Just in terms of like, quality of player. If they're not offering Bam, then they don't have enough. Frankly, if they're offering Bam, Bam's amazing, but you're going to have to probably give a Bam hero. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to give up a lot still, even including Bam, and the salaries wouldn't match up, so they'd have to figure something else out. There'd have to be a lot of assets tied to it. You get my point. But ultimately, though, they were not willing to trade Bam, which I can understand because the goal is to pair those two guys together in that situation to turn into another Eastern juggernaut, of course. But, I mean, if you're the Bucks, why would you play ball unless you're getting back some premium picks, which is the only other reason that I think they would even consider trading Giannis in any way, for the record, unless they're getting back some blue chip guy that they know will develop into a superstar, or they're getting a horde of picks. So anyway, if Antetokumpo had asked out, the Heat were prepared to make an offer that did not include Bam, according to a source, but it's unlikely any such offer would have been seriously considered. Yeah, so some of this is also that the Bucks are not really looking to trade Giannis, right? You can't really buy a house that's not for sale, right? You have to, if you're going to try to do that, you have to blow them away, right? You have to really blow them away and provide them with an offer that they simply can't refuse, right? So you're obviously going to pay a premium in that situation. So they're not really trying to look to trade Giannis in the first place. So even if they had put everything they had on the table, I don't know that they even accept that anyway, because again, they don't want to trade Giannis. And really quick, I want us to actually take a look at the Miami Heat's assets here. They've actually got their own first round picks, generally speaking, right? 26 and pretty much all the way out. They don't have the 27 one. That one's going out somewhere to Charlotte. Miami's first round pick to Charlotte is protected. But otherwise, I mean, they've got a lot of their own stuff. Really, the problem is they don't have extra assets. And the concern would be if you trade Giannis to, for example, to the Heat or to any other team, and they're trying to give you their own draft picks, you would project for that to be a bad/late pick because the team would be pretty good with Giannis on it, right? So that's another piece of this too. Like if you're trading him, you probably want to, ideally, if you're the Bucks, you're going to try to meet wherever he would want to go. And there seems to be some interest with some of these other teams like in New York. But ideally, if you're them, you could pull back a asset from a bad team that's projected to be bad, not the team that you're sending the player to that would be projected to be good anyway. All right, so let's get into the Miami Herald article. But really quick, we need to go over a quick ad and word from today's video sponsor.
Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using code Bulletin. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the report now. The Heat have remained interested in trying to acquire Bucks star Giannis Antetokumpo, but he never seriously considered any team except the Knicks this past offseason. Shams reported today. The report said the Knicks and Bucks spoke for a while this summer, but the Bucks ultimately did not want to trade him, and the two-time MVP did not actually request a trade. If Giannis had asked out, the Heat were prepared to make an offer that did not include Bam, according to a source, but it's unlikely any such offer would have been seriously considered. If Giannis requests a trade at some point, it remains to be seen if the Heat would ever change its mind about offering Adebayo, but it's unlikely that the Bucks star would want to join a Heat team without Adebayo. Adebayo. That's another thing too. Like, I didn't talk about that. Like I said, you're trying to pair these guys, but also in the case of like what the player wants, yeah, if I'm Giannis, you're not going to trade the best player from the team and then put me on that team. And all of a sudden we're good, obviously, but the best player just got moved for me. Like, you want to play with that guy. That's the whole reason you're going there. Right. So, and their fit would be a little clunky on the offensive end, but man, they'd be a terror on defense. It would be something, dude. So yeah, that's another piece to it too, for sure. Anyway, there's questions whether or not he would want to go there without Adebayo, with whom he shares an agent. So it's all likely moot. Antetokumpo has said publicly that winning is very important to him and he wants to be able to compete regularly for a championship. Yeah, and so that's the interesting piece to this too, is that Giannis has been very open about the fact that, he said multiple things, multiple times for multiple years, that there's just a bunch of quotes where he's like, basically, if I don't win more, then my career isn't fulfilled the way I want it to be. Long story short, to paraphrase, right? Like, he said those types of things. He wants to win repeatedly. He wants to win more than one championship. He wants to be out there and be winning. And frankly, if we're being honest, I thought the Bucks pulled off a masterclass offseason by being able to flip Damian Lillard into Miles Turner, who was a player who wasn't even on the market as far as we know. It was just in the finals, things like that. I thought they pulled off a masterclass. Now, there are ramifications that are long-term there, like the Lillard contract being on the books. How does that impact your roster building around Giannis? And that's another piece to this all, is that was a humongous gamble. But the Bucks were in a situation, we talked about this a lot last season, that they don't have pivot moves, which is why I thought that was a masterclass, because they created something out of nothing. And again, there are long-term consequences, but they don't have assets, they don't have tradable salaries too much. Like, they don't have a pivot because they've gone all in repeatedly on this era over the last like 4 or 5 years, and they haven't really been able to get back to the mountaintop. Now, thankfully, they did win a championship in that run, so there is something to show for it, but they've gone in repeatedly making big swings, and Lillard was the latest big swing that didn't pan out for them. And other guys have dealt with injuries, Lillard included, but like Chris Middleton has always dealt with injuries. Giannis himself has dealt with injuries. Like, all these different things have stacked up against them. And then when you really take a step back and view it, you understand and you see and you realize how hard it is to actually win at the highest level in the NBA with all these other external factors, at play here. And so, like I said, the Bucks, they didn't really have anything. And so the fact they were able to get him a center, which on the heels of losing a center, but I would say that they got the younger, better player, of course, but somebody that fits his specific play style, 3-and-D center like that. I mean, those are pretty hard to find. There's not a lot of those guys in the NBA. There's some younger guys that could look like that, like maybe, Huff in a couple years. He seems to be finally garnering some notoriety. He's been pretty good the last couple seasons as he's got out of the developmental stage, excuse me. But there's not a lot of those guys, man. There's just not. And Brook Lopez to Miles Turner is a great swap, but ultimately they were able to get him somebody that fits perfectly alongside his play style. I just wonder about the Bucks because they've got some really good pieces around Giannis. The team, I think, is really cohesive around Giannis, and the East is wide open this year because some of the best teams, the Celtics, the Pacers, these teams are not going to be there. Obviously, there are still good teams like the Knicks, the Cavs, and a couple other teams, but ultimately the Bucks are right in the mix. And so, I mean, aside from whatever you want to say with Philly, I guess they came to mind, and I was like, I don't know. There's so many question marks there, but they're certainly a team that could be really good if they're healthy. But it's Philly. I don't know. Anyway, like, they want to be in the mix this year, the Bucks, and this is your chance. Like, you've got all these opportunities here because of the way it's lined up, but it's going to take a Herculean effort for Giannis. And frankly, it's going to take more from him than he's probably ever had to do with the way this roster is truly constructed right now. I go back to that last title team they had, and frankly, it required a lot from Giannis too, certainly in the biggest moments in the playoffs and the finals. But that's what you would expect from your 1A superstar, a guy that's a top 5 guy in the NBA, a Giannis, right? Like, that's not surprising. But he did have other guys that came in and contributed and that were pretty close to being all-star level players. And Drew, who I would say was right around there. Certainly when you factor his defense, because he doesn't get the same statistical production. But anyway, and then Chris also was big back then, right? So, like, it's going to require a lot of guys like that too, that play their role to a T and can get these things done. But like I said, it's going to require Giannis to, I think, take it up another level if they want to win this year. And so realistically, unless teams go down with injuries, and at that point they'd make it out of the East, and then I guess your best bet is that hoping that the West is such a bloodbath that whatever team finally makes it through is beaten, bruised, and battered and is just not able to do it. And frankly, that's probably the case for a lot of these East teams, like probably all but maybe one. I don't know who that one is, but seriously, it's the truth. So in that situation, things could be successful, but that the competition will be stauncher the following season. Maybe some teams drop out, but we know the Celtics should be back. The Pacers should be back, the following season. Giannis will be a year older. He's already over 30. Like, I do wonder about how things go, but for now, in the short term, like I said in the beginning, it is really cool to see that he stayed there. On the topic of the Heat, the Heat are interesting. We talked about them recently. Frankly, I don't know what they do here. They've got like this window before these extensions kick in, before they got to pay some of these younger guys. They've got this small window where it's like in the next year, maybe 2 years, they got to figure out what they're doing. Maybe 2 years, but like in the next year for sure. Like ideally this time next offseason, they have something figured out. Maybe they're gonna, they've got to extend Hero, whatever they're gonna do with Wiggins, who's got that $30 million player option the following season for 26-27. Powell, Rozier, those guys will be off the books. Are they gonna extend them? Who knows, right? There's a lot of different factors at play, but ultimately Bam's going to get more expensive. He jumps into, another $12 million that season, and it just keeps on going up. Like, they've got this window here to figure out this roster and its direction. And I don't think they want to keep treading water as a middle of the road Eastern Conference team that can sometimes get spunky and make a deep run. I don't know without Jimmy if they're able to even do that anymore, but I digress. I don't know if they want to keep on running that same way. Maybe they pivot towards an actual rebuild. Maybe they have a good retool, bring in a star level player, somebody. I think they need to get another player as good as Adebayo in here to really have a good chance. And again, I think Bam is great. So that's kind of a tough ask because those guys are not growing on trees. And that's where, like, I do wonder what the options are, because Heroes, again, due for an extension. We talked about that and all that as well. So I think there's some interesting stuff here happening in Miami, but let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about everything. And we'll discuss. Thank you so much for your support.